Okay, guys, I've got TechAnywhere installed on my Android device here. As you can see, I've got an icon on my desktop for launching into TechAnywhere. If I hit that little guy there, it'll ask me for a login. So you can do a couple things here. You should already have your device set up. If not, this may be the first time you've ever logged into the device. It'll ask you a few other questions: username, password, and host address. Host address is going to be, what server controls where to connect to. But if you've already logged in, like I have here, you can see it's just asking me for my password, where I can stick in my password. It'll log in, connect to the server, look for any new work orders, um, pull down anything new, and also try to upload anything that's in progress. One thing to note here: it is possible to hit the cancel. So if you are in a remote area where you do not have internet connection, where you wouldn't be able to make that connection, you can still cancel. You're running in an offline mode, so the last time that you connected to the server, you will have that information to use. You can go through and do whatever you need to the work order. Now, there are some limitations here and there. There are some areas that do require a network connection, but um, basically everything's queuing up on your device until you can get an internet connection. You can then log in, sync, and it will upload all that queued information. But I do have a login, so I will go ahead and put in my password, hit login, and you can see it goes through the sync process. And that's pulling down and updating any information for my work orders. Now, you do have this main menu here as soon as you log in. And we'll go through these briefly, and then we'll talk to them. We'll go through them in depth here. So the manage work orders is where you're going to be managing all the work orders that are assigned to you. So there's a few tabs there. We'll talk about that in a little bit. A time review is going to be a summary of all the labor that's been entered on your device by you. You can kind of review that, and if if there were adjustments made elsewhere, or if someone else enters labor for you, it doesn't reflect that. It just shows labor that's been entered by you on your device. The toolbox is where all of the settings are going to be for TechAnywhere, and also a way to do a manual sync, which I'll explain here in a little bit. New work order allows you to create a new work order for yourself. Either it's going to be after hours, weekend, or just generically if you need to create a work order for an existing site. The site does need to already exist in the back-end system in order to be able to create a work order for it. You can also just log off, which will take you out of the application, close it down, and it just gets you out of the app. So I'm going to hop around here a little bit. Manage work orders we'll talk about in a second. Time review will show once we have some labor. Let's go into toolbox here. Like I mentioned, this is where you can go in and do a manual sync. So I showed you before, you can log in and it'll sync. TechAnywhere also does some automatic syncs throughout the process. It's going to happen based off of certain events. So if you close a work order, if you submit a PO, and there's a few areas all throughout TechAnywhere that just invoke a sync, but there is no automatic, like every 10 minutes, every 30 minutes. We don't do anything like that. We don't want to kill your battery or do any kind of excessive data usage. So the way we have it works for the most part, but there is also a way to do a manual sync if you're in the middle of something and dispatcher calls you up and you need to get a new work order pulled down, or maybe they canceled you from a work order and you want your device to reflect the changes from the back office, you can come in here, hit the synchronize button, goes through and does that same sync thing that we talked about earlier. There are three options up on top: retrieve inventory, flat rates, company files. You rarely, if ever, need to change these unless instructed by manager, or in the beginning phases, there might be some bulk loads of data, new inventory, new flat rates. Those will actually happen automatically every 7 days. So you really don't need to worry about them unless you're starting new, um, or something changed recently where all of a sudden you have a new set of inventory that you can use. The other one is the retrieve company files. Also, you're never going to need to change it unless you guys change your company logos or change addresses, phone numbers, stuff like that. It's the little logo that shows up on your receipt. If for whatever reason it ever needs to be changed, you can we'll change it on our server. You can download it. The reason why we don't do all these every single time is just excessive data. So we don't want to slow down your sync or use up your data plan. So you can see here as I check them off, it does take a little bit longer to do that. So once this finishes up, I'll show you a few other areas in the toolbox. Here we go. Here it goes. Okay. So now I have a complete up-to-date inventory flat rate and company files from our server here. The next section here you really don't need to worry about, and you're really only going to ever notice this if you run in that offline mode. Like I showed you before, you can cancel the login. This is stuff that's queued up on your device, and so once you can get an internet connection, it will send up. You can see stuff build up if you're ever in an offline mode there, but really for the most part, it's you don't need to worry about it. The next part here is the data source URL. This is all something that you're really never going to need to change, except for when we go from your test environment to your live environment. And there'll be some special instructions that come along with this, but for now we'll just leave it. But if for whatever reason that needs to be changed or instructed to be changed, your data source URL or your host, that's where you can change it. You can change it there and hit your update host. The version number here, at this time, we're on version 4.0, 0.058, 0.016. This is the 16th build of 4.0. We're always releasing new versions of TechAnywhere here. Our application's hosted on the Google Play Store, which is available through here by hitting the check for updates button. It'll actually take you out to our Play Store site here, and if there was an update available, one of these two buttons over here would say update. It would download and install it. For the most part, there is an automatic update already set, so your device just decides whenever it wants to update your apps. You might have noticed notifications up at the top for updates there, but that is an option. And you can also, on that page, you can see detailed release notes, and there's also links to even more detailed release notes about what we're putting out there. Then the last section on here is the advanced options, and they are exactly that. There's really no reason for you to go in here unless instructed. Now there's quite a few options here. There's send files, which gives you the ability to send a database and or log file. That's used for debugging purposes. So if you're having an issue on your device, contact your manager. It'll flow. If it gets up to me, I may request that you send me up your database and or log file. I'll take it, put it on my device, and try to recreate your issue. If you just send those up, like I'm going to do right here, if I check off database and send, I won't know what that file is. I don't get notifications. So make sure it goes through the proper channels to make sure that I'm looking out for it and know what your issue is. The update data kind of takes care of botched upgrades. If something were to happen, this gives you the chance to redo an upgrade and also do a backup and restore of the database in case you're swapping devices where your old one is being retired and you're getting a new device to replace the old. The clear data is going to be used when you go out of your test database and into the live environment. We don't want to carry any of that test data into your live. So what we're going to do is we're going to clear it all out of here and start fresh. This is basically sets you as a brand new installation of TechAnywhere, as if you installed it on a fresh device. Of course, doing this will delete everything you've got, so make sure if you're doing it, um, really you should never do it unless you're having some catastrophic issues that we can't solve. Training mode, nothing you ever need to worry about since we have a separate test and live environment. So make sure you don't go in there, because if you check that off, just playing around here and you check that off, you're going to start running some issues, because the idea of training mode is that it holds onto the data and doesn't allow it to go up. So the idea there is you're testing in the live environment, which you don't need to do. So make sure you're not playing around with that. And then there are some different color themes to choose from here. You can play around with that and see what works best for you. That's it for the toolbox. Let's talk about new work order. In new work order, you can search for a site. You have to find a site. So you can search by the ID or the name of the site. If you know the address, any part of the address, city, state, zip, you can just fill in a portion. You don't have to know the whole name. So if you were to say SA, let's see what we can find there. It's going to search for all sites and names that would have SA in there. And actually, I got a warning, there's over 1,000 results with that. So it actually can only show us up to 1,000 results back. So SA is kind of a bad idea, but let's just go ahead and pick one. Say I pick this site here. Looks like a customer address there. Site information, you can find information about this site. You've got phone numbers, fax, some other information down below if provided through the system on that. And then there's also a retrieve site history, which will actually go out to your server and look for any existing or past work orders that have ever been opened up for this site. This is the same site history that you'll find when you actually have the work order, but gives you the ability to look up history here and see if there's if this is a recurring issue or what the deal might be. This is a site I picked at random, so there's not going to be any history out there for that unless I were to specifically find one that does. Work order information. So you can see over here on the right hand side there are some colors here. They're indicating the requirements for this. So green indicating that there's nothing I need to worry about. Everything is good there. Red being I'm going to have to go in here and fill out some information before I can get to the last step, which is down here creating the work order. So let's go into work order information. It will default in your technician that you're logged in as, so you're assigning a work order to yourself. There's a little field down here that indicates a required field, so the ones with the little star next to them, you can fill that in. PO number, if required, that'll change if you need to do that or not, or you can fill one in if it's optional. Original caller, I'll put in a caller here. Picking a service category, this will help you filter down, working your way down. You can pick work codes, equipment. So if you were to say this is an electrical type job, now my work codes are only going to be electrical type work codes. And then also there's down on the equipment level, down at the very bottom, you can see it filtered down to just my equipment type of electrical. It's all just driven off of what you're picking from these lists here. You're also going to need to pick a date and time of when you're expected to go out there. I'm just going to let it default into today and the current time, but of course you can put this into the future if you need to. Fill out all that information, save that. Now it's saved that. You can see it lit up green. It also lit up work request as green because it pulled in from that work code. But of course you can fill in more information here about what the issue is. There's also common phrases which aren't really being used right now. We may use them in the future, but you can see you could use common phrases which are basically like predetermined paragraphs or sentences. That way you don't have to type them out if you're using the same literature every single time. Fill that in, hit save. If there were any opening call scripts to fill out, there would be question and answer here for your customer that you could ask. It's disabled right now because there's nothing set up for the site. And if I hit this create work order button, what that's going to do is send some information back up to the server. The server is going to verify that everything that you've entered is correct. It will also then create that work order and assign it to you. And this all happens within a minute. So we'll actually be able to go back to that. That's what this message is saying, basically saying, wait a minute, and then perform a sync. And of course, depending on the workload of the system, if it's busy, it may take longer than a minute, but we'll give it some time. Then we'll go in, we'll do a sync, we should be able to see that work order. But in the meantime, let's hop in. I don't really care about that work order in particular. We've got plenty of other work orders assigned to us. If we go into the Manage Work Order section, we've got three main tabs up on top. We've got a Dispatch tab, an Open tab, and a Completed tab. So the way this works is Dispatch tab are new work orders that are assigned to you. Everything's based off of status from the back system. So they'll create a work order, they'll assign it to you. It goes to a status of unacknowledged where it shows up here the next time you sync. You can then go in, take a look at these, find out which one you're going to work on. So let's say we go into this guy here. This is actually asking for my GPS location to kind of help us out with latitude and longitude of status changes, but also giving us turn-by-turn navigation directions if we want to do that. So I'm going to disable, I'm going to hit no for now just because I'm actually running on an emulator version of Android running on Windows, and it doesn't really have great support for finding my location. So you can see we've got some information up on top here about the job and or site, any work requested, what kind of equipment was specified by the dispatcher, and work requested for that. You could acknowledge the work order here, but then also there's the get directions, which will give you navigation directions to the site address that's here. I will go ahead and acknowledge this work order and show you what happens. So it actually takes it out of this list. Can't really see because I have a pretty big list here, but if you recognize the work order, you can see it's no longer in here, but it's now been moved over here. So now we've got an acknowledgement of the work order. It actually makes a status change. Your dispatcher can see that within a minute of doing so. So I do have some other work orders. This is where you kind of do all of your work order entry. So you can see that. Then there's also the completed tab, which I mentioned a little bit earlier ago. So when you once you complete a work order, it'll move it out of the open list, move it over the completed list, where you can see that. You can also click into it and see the receipt. And then those work orders will be purged automatically 14 days from the time that you complete it. They just remove off of there because, as you can imagine, if you're doing a lot of work orders, that's going to build up quite fast. So let's go ahead and take a look at, let me just see what I have here, if there's anything in particular I'd want to use. I'm going to go ahead and use this one, Victoria Gardens. I believe I was testing with this one in a previous case, so we'll play around with that one. So starting from the top, we have status. So this is a list of all the statuses that you have to choose from. Waiting service, travel, on-site. So as you can see, you can go in here and change the status to any one of these at any time. We also keep a log of the status changes that have happened. So as you can see, we just recorded that. So if you ever need to go back and find, when did I say I was on site? I forget when I got on site. So it's helpful to you to actually do these status changes that lets your dispatcher know your current state of the work order. But also, it's also helpful for looking up the old history of that. You do have some more completion status, so when you're ready to be done with this work order, you're going to go to checked out. But you can see if I go to try to change it, it won't let me complete this work order. It won't let me mark it to checked out until you've met some other requirements. So in this case, until a receipt is generated. So you need to go through, do your work ticket. As you can see, there hasn't been a payment recorded. And then if I go to try to make a payment now, it's also going to tell me, well, you haven't filled out anything on this work order. So you get, it tries to help you um, keep track of, when you can and can't complete the work order. There's a few other statuses that you could use. Um, this list is set for the moment, but could be changed into the future. Manager review is also a completion status. Waiting paperwork, waiting parts on site are just regular statuses that you can change at any time. So based on how you guys are going to go through your workflow, you've got different statuses to meet your needs. Let's go into the work order information here, and this is the same kind of information we saw before when we were acknowledging the work order. So we have the job information, the site information over here. You do have an option here to fill in the email address. So you can see there's a little pen and paper. You can put in, fill in an email address there, save that. Now that'll actually record that, send it up back to the office, and that'll be a permanent record that you can that'll always be there. So the next time another tech or you get this work order, it'll know that that customer's email address is there. If for whatever reason there's multiple email addresses, feel free to fill them in with commas. Oops, I didn't mean to say Gmail. We want to go customer.com was the original. So you could do something like that as well. What else? We've got the work requested down here. We got dispatch notes. Now there's work order comments as well. This is a site level comment. So you can also, one of the common scenarios I say, if there's a combo code to get into a gate or door or something, maybe you could record that there, and it's kind of a nice note anytime you get out there. But also gives you the ability to say, they changed this and now it's something else like 1234. That is, like I said, just like the email, a permanent record in the system that will always come back down. Can manage it that way. At the bottom, there's the same get directions button for getting directions, and then there's also the site history, which will pull open a list of all the work orders that were ever open for the site. It's in chronological order there, as you can see back on June 2nd. There was some technicians assigned. Now keep in mind this is canceled. This is testing data, so it is what it is as far as our test goes. But if you were to click into one of these and take a look at it, you're going to see some history here of, when, what equipment was worked on, what kind of labor, what miscellaneous parts and charges were added there. It's a good way for you to be able to go back, or maybe even on the current work order, see, that there was a technician out here a few days before. All of their charges are posted at this point in time, and you can see them and go back and even see a price and extend that into yours if you need to. So that's a list of all the history for the site. There are other history functions all throughout TechAnywhere. There's even an equipment history, so if you just want to see history that's been done to just this particular piece of equipment, you can see that. And then there's also work performed history. So if you don't care about the charges and everything, you just want to see what the technician performed, you can see that as well. We'll get into those sections later on. Call scripts. So this would be, earlier I showed you when we were creating the work order, it gives you the option to see opening call scripts or enter them in. So if a dispatcher filled out questions and answers, here they would show as questions and answers, just read-only information for you to see. Skipping down all the way at the bottom, there's an optional closing call scripts. Related and sort of, these could be reminders or something. So if they were set for you and required, you would need to fill them in before you would be able to get to the point of completing out this work order. Back up to the top is the document management. You can kind of see the same colors we had before. Now the yellow here indicates that there is nothing in there. So I already know going in that if I were to click into that, I'm not going to find any attachments in there. But maybe I want to attach something. So you can attach pictures and stuff like that. So we'll go in here in document management, and it's separated into two halves, a to office and a from office. So the to office is stuff that you want to provide to the backend system. You can attach a plethora of items there, but the other option is stuff that's coming back from the office. So this would be stuff that maybe your dispatch or manager wanted you to have access to. Could be historical documents, just could be generic documents about the site. All of that will show here, and as you can imagine, as time goes on and you guys do a lot of work for a site in our system, all these documents are going to build up. So we have some filter options here to filter by file type. So whether it's a PDF, a TXT file, a DOC file, you can sort here. It's a dynamic list, so depending on what shows up here, we'll dynamically build that list out. There's a description here, so if you know a word that would be in the description, you can type that in and it'll search. And then there's a category, which is a type of a category, so you could be like pictures, TechAnywhere documents, PDF forms, things like that, where you can generically filter by category. It would show you down here. You can click into it and view it and see that. There's also we already talked about the to office. So in the to office, you want to attach something. You can do that by hitting your little menu button up here in the top right hand corner, which gives you some options. You can attach a file, which allows you to go browse through your system. So say this is a file that you downloaded or created from some other application. You can go browse through wherever that file is stored. I should be able to find something here, which is your company logo. You fill in the description of what you just attached, hit OK. Now you can see we've got a logo attachment. And just to verify, to click into that, you can see there it is, the logo of what you just attached. Now, when I complete this work order, it will send that attachment and attach to the site and the work order. So if you ever get another work order for that site, or another technician gets assigned to this work order, they will see that attachment. If you realize that that was attached by accident, rather than just clicking on it or tapping on it to open it, you can set your finger down on it, what they call long hold. So if you long hold it, it'll then ask you to remove it. You'll actually see this all throughout TechAnywhere. And, as options to delete these things. The only thing to keep in mind is once it's been submitted back to the office, you can't remove it anymore because it's already a record in the back office. So if there's a mistake like that, you want to communicate that back with the, someone that has access to the SAMPRO backend system, and they can remove or edit whatever kind of mistakes were made. I'm not going to remove that. I do want to see that attached there. You can also attach pictures. So if you hit the attach picture option, you have the ability to take a new picture by hitting the take picture, or which will actually load up your camera and you can take a picture. Or the other option is to attach something that's already been taken. So if you already snapped these photos, or if they're photos pulled from some other application or downloaded, you can hit attach, which will load up your gallery. You can then select one of the photos, and here we have a monkey. You can give a description there, attach it, clicking into it. There we have a picture that we've attached. Of course, you can go in and attach as many of these pictures and files as you find fit. Just remember that the larger the file and the more files that you attach, when they send up to the server, they will take longer to submit, depending on your internet connection. Now that I have some attachments, I can also do a few other options. I can email them, hit the email, which ones you want to email, go through, hit email. It'll prompt you to, if you want to email them to your customer, to your manager, whoever you want to email to, feel free to do that. There is a remove option, which is the same as the long click, but this is actually gives you the ability to remove multiple files at once. There is a submit option. So I mentioned earlier you can only submit, or those files will only submit to the office once you've completed the work order. Well, maybe you want to submit them now. Someone on the back office wants to see them now. You can check them off. So hit submit. Yes, I'm going to submit these. It'll upload those to the server um, and attach them within a few minutes of you doing so. Now, once it's been submitted, if I try to long click to remove it, it'll tell me it can't because it's been transmitted. So that's what I was mentioning earlier. And then the last option here actually has nothing to do with the document manager. You'll actually find this all throughout TechAnywhere in every screen that there's a menu option here. There's a home button. And what the home button will actually do is step you all the way back out to the main menu. So we're not even in the work order anymore. We're all the way back to the main menu where you can log off or go in and do a sync. It all, just a quick way to get all the way back out to that main menu. But I will get back into that work order because, like I said, you will find that all throughout. So here's the home. If you're on the work order information, here's the home. So you'll find that just about everywhere you are in TechAnywhere. Now that we've attached something in the document manager, you can see it lit up green, indicating that there is something attached because we attached it. The equipment and service section, we won't talk about that too much just right now. That is kind of the main section of TechAnywhere, which allows you to go in and pick the equipment and fill out the charges. I'll skip that just for now. We'll hop back into it shortly. The purchase order section allows you to go in and create a purchase order. Now, you may have actually needed to specify the equipment first before you get into purchase order. So if you're purchasing for an equipment that isn't on this work order yet, you would want to go into the equipment, pick your equipment, add it to the work order, and then go into your purchase order and select which equipment you're going to be purchasing for, which will show up here in a second. So when you go in the purchase order, it's going to assign a PO number, starts off with your initials, and starts off at 10,000. It knows that I'm purchasing for this site. The idea is that you're out at the vendor. You're going to select your vendor. You're going to find it here. The idea is that you're there. You're going to pick up your purchasing and walking away with the parts today. Because what's going to happen is the parts that are being purchased here are assumed that you're using 100% of them and that you're purchasing to your truck. So there's some options here when we get to that. So you're going to pick your vendor, pick one at random. It doesn't really matter in this case for testing, but you're going to pick your vendor, and then you have the option to add material and add miscellaneous. So this would be actual inventory items that you have in your system. These would be miscellaneous items, non-inventory like. So I'm actually going to do one of each, and that way I can show you what it looks like on once it's been purchased. So you're going to fill in your quantity of how many you're purchasing, pick your equipment of what you are purchasing to, pick your part number. So in the material lookup here, you have some options for finding the part. You could, if you guys were barcoding your inventory, there's a barcode scanner. I don't believe you guys are doing any of that, but in the future, if you ever want to, you can. You have your group. You can search by group. So let's say we're looking for plywood. So we have some options here for purchasing plywood. And yes, we'll add that. So I'm going to purchase 5. Now the unit cost does default in from the last time it was purchased. It kind of does some guessing, but most likely that's not what that vendor's selling it for. So adjust your what they're selling it for, and you can see it adjusts your extended cost out there. Add that. Of course, you're not limited to just one. You can add as many material items as you need. In your miscellaneous, we're going to purchase 5 of these as well. And my other rate, let's see, I forget what we were going to do here exactly. But you could, select maybe we're just going to use the supply. So this would be like your miscellaneous items. And you can fill in description here of what it is. I'm just going to say generically we're purchasing 5 widgets, and we'll change the price here to be $10 each. So once you've itemized everything there for the purchase order, you need to then submit it. So you're going to hit your submit, and then it confirms just to make sure that you're ready to do that. So say yes. It'll do a sync. So what the sync is doing is just your normal sync, but it's also sending up that PO to the system. So they then have that information um, on the back end of that purchase order being created. They can manage it there. Now, what that has done is those 10 items, five quantity of each of those 10 items have actually been added to my equipment already, where I can actually go in now. And so this, when I go into the equipment service section here, it lists the equipment that's on my work order. And this equipment is for this install. So if I click into that, now my material and miscellaneous have lit up green, indicating that there is something on there and I've met my requirement. So there is my plywood. Now here's something to keep in mind here. You do have the option to say, I purchased 5, but I'm only using 3 in this case. So what's going to happen? You're basically saying you're using 3 for the job, and those 2 remaining are still on your truck. That's completely valid. Now it did some markup here to find a price, but you can see here it's not billing them. We have it set up a special way that it's not billing them. So this is a COD type work order where pricing's coming involved. Now we're working on cleaning up the sites and actually making ones that are more service T&M, where you're not producing a total and collecting payment out in the field. Those are 2 different types of work orders. We call COD, which you're seeing here, and non-COD. And of course, there's different flavors of each of those. You're getting into flat rates and stuff like that. So right now, let's assume that I'm doing flat rate billing. So my bill quantity is actually 0. My price is 0. My taxable doesn't matter in this case, because in the end, we're going to add a flat rate to this work order. Say we're doing this work, or we're doing this quoted work, or whatever the situation may be, for X amount of dollars. So it's a fixed price, and we're just filling out our costs here basically. To just say that we did all of these is your actual values. We used 3 of these items, need to record those. You're going to put in your labor, your parts, all of that stuff will come through, and we'll talk about that as we go through some more. So that's our inventory. We're going to look at the miscellaneous that we added here. There's my 5 widgets. Now you'll notice I can't change the quantity. I'm trying to click in here. I can't change the quantity to 5 there. So this is non-inventory parts. This you can't change the quantity because there's no quantity to manage here. What you can do is change the bill quantity. So if this was more of a service T&M where you're just saying, well, I purchased 5, but maybe I broke one of them, and so you want to bring the quantity down from 5 to 4. You could do that, but in this case of I'm doing flat rate, my bill quantity is 0, so I don't even have to worry about that so much. So let's back out. Let's actually talk about the equipment. I kind of skipped over that a little bit. So in the equipment, this is the equipment that was specified by the dispatcher, whoever created the work order, whether it's a PM or you created it or a dispatcher created it. This is the equipment that was specified. And like I said, you can click into it and start making your entries. But you also have some other options to add more equipment to this work order. You have 2 options. You can add existing, and this is a list of all the existing equipment that exists for this site. So it's possible that the customer didn't, or a dispatcher didn't understand what the issue was. They picked the incorrect equipment. This is actually turns out to be a mechanical type issue or electrical. You can add that equipment to the work order by clicking on it. It adds it. Now you've got multiple equipment on the work order, and you can enter your charges in separately. You also have the option to add new. So if this is a a unique equipment record that you guys want to track, a particular unit, you can give it a ID, name, manufacturer model, serial number, all the information that has to do with that equipment, and create it, and it becomes a permanent record in your system where you can service that into the future as well. I'm not going to do that. We don't need any extra equipment for this, but I will show you something here when we go into the install equipment type here. So I'm going to click into that. Up at the very top, you see the equipment service details. This is the same type of information we just saw there, where you can go in and fill this information out for existing equipment. So it'll update existing equipment. So all the information there. There's options for barcodes, locations. There's also an additional info field, which gives you 20 user fields that you guys can use for whatever purposes you want. You guys have the ability to, the text don't, but in the back office, change these user field IDs so you universally know that user field 3 means this, and so it'll reflect on the here if that ever becomes gets put in use. Components. So the idea behind components is that you would have a smaller unit on a larger unit. So if you want to track warranty when something was installed, you can review that information in components. Talked about history before. You have equipment history and also a metrics history. Equipment history is all the work orders that have ever been opened for this equipment, which is install. It also gives you an option to do an additional layer of filtering. So if you know, if you're looking for a particular type of work, this will look in the work requested and performed for a keyword that you search here. Otherwise, if you just hit search, you'll get all of your results back. So here's all the work orders. It's actually on here twice because we've got two different texts on here on the same work order, but it'll break it down. You can see the information that, say, David has done on there. The other option there is metrics. I don't believe you're using that at this time, but if you begin using metrics with our system, this is a way to see basically a stats page of every metric measurement ever taken across every visit. You can kind of get an idea of trends or quality degrading over time. I don't have a good example here of PM tasks, parts, and metrics. Basically, the idea of PM tasks is that a set list of tasks can be provided to you. Do this, do this, do this. This is typically done on a PM, but it doesn't necessarily have to be isolated to a PM. And you could see this list of things that need to be done. Check them off as you're doing them, or after you're done, check them off to say that they are done. You hit the add button and it takes all those tasks and populates them into your work performed. So now you don't have to type out that you did that, did that, did that. They'll show up here in work performed that you did them. PM tasks, kind of the same concept. You get a list of parts to say, commonly used parts when you go out on a PM. So if you're servicing a type of equipment that typically always needs the same equipment, why go search for them in your inventory system when you can just find them in your PM parts, check them off, hit the add, and they'll add them to the material and miscellaneous sections. Now, something to note about all that is if the purchase order was created, I showed you created it, and they automatically show up here in the material miscellaneous. If someone in the back office were to create that PO for you, and as soon as it's marked received, that it's in hand, they will also automatically show up in your material and miscellaneous sections here. So if it's purchased, they'll show up there as just makes it easier for data entry. Metrics, I kind of mentioned before, would be like measurements and things like that, where you can record I'm just making things up, but you can do pressures and temperatures, whatever kind of measurements you might want to record. You might currently be doing that on a form, which you could continue to use if that's something that you guys are looking to do. If you want to convert that into a more digital form that is more compatible with an Android device that we can integrate with on a PDF form that you could open up through Document Manager, open that up, fill it all out, save it. That's an option as well. The labor section is pretty easy. When you get in here, you need to add an entry, so you hit add. It's going to default into your technician record. You have some options here of how many hours. So I was out here, let's say 3.5 hours. You've got a labor rate and pay type. So the labor rate is at which rate you are charging the customer for. So you have a drop down, it will default in. So if there's anything other than the norm, you can select that from the list. There are pay types. So these are basically your regular time, overtime of what you're getting paid, and you've also got some other options there. The date will default into the current date, and you do have some options if you want to go back and enter labor for tomorrow, or well, no, not tomorrow. You can't into the future, but into the past you can. The unit price and bill hours and price and taxable, that's all getting set to 0 right now because we're in this flat rate billing mode. Actually, none of that really even shows up if you're in more of a non-COD like service T&M situation. And then we have a description here, which is just pulling from our labor rate of just technician time. You do also have a status log here up in the corner. Tells you when you made those status changes, and you can see it's been 26 minutes since I said I was on site. Kind of use that as a helpful tool if you're trying to track when you got on site for a labor entry. Add that line. You do have the option to add more labor. You can add labor for another tech if you need to. If you've got a helper tech, maybe you want to enter in all the information on one device. That'll be helpful if you're trying to come up with a total price for the entire service for all techs involved. If one tech does the entry for everyone, one device will have the total for that. Just keep in mind, like I mentioned before with the time review, if you enter labor for someone else, that someone else no longer has access to that time review on their device. So that's labor. The material, so that's coming from a PO. Like I mentioned, labor from other POs can show up here as well. If you're just pulling stuff off your truck and you want to add in inventory parts from your truck, you can go in and say, all right, quantity of 1, my location. You have the same filter options that I showed you before. There's also an option here to limit to truck stock. So this just says, what items do I have on my truck? So you can click into, I'm going to use some refrigerant tubing. You can click on that. It'll pull it in. And there we have that part number, the description. There is a unit of measurement here, so keep in mind this is charging them by the foot, managing the inventory by foot. One other thing to consider here on this inventory, rather than just clicking on it, if you do a long click on it, it'll actually look up, and this does require an internet connection. It does look up to the system. What are all the where can I find this if I don't have it on my truck? You can actually see different locations. This is probably your main warehouse. There's 30 of them. So if there's any question, you can call up inventory management and see if one of those could be transferred unless you need to purchase. So we've got that item. We're going to add that. And just like anything, you're not limited in any way as to how many items you can add here. So that's our inventory. In the miscellaneous section, Miscellaneous is exactly that. It's miscellaneous. It can be dual part. You've got um, two things here. Well, maybe three. You could do a couple things. You can add in, your miscellaneous parts. So if you've got, rags or screws or something that is just small, you've got your $5 supply option here, and you can fill in description if you want to. You've also got another option here for other types of charges. So maybe you've got a quoted amount you might want to add, or you're going to charge for parking or a jackhammer charge or freight charges. You can add these as well to the charge if you want to get that added there. Um, I will skip a few of these just for a second. I'll come back to it. Let's talk about the flat rate. So like I said, in this scenario, I picked a more flat rate type of work order. We're going to add in a quantity of 1, and basically we're just going to say, what we're doing. Now you're going to pick your flat rate group, so you have a lot of different flat rate groups here. And let's just say this is a humidistat replacement. You can click into that. Yes. Now you've got some options here. You've got a price level here, so you've got different price levels depending on the customer situation, what you're going to give them. And then the unit price shows up there, and you can control whether it's taxable or not. So you're going to add in that this is basically for $203. This is a flat rate to replace that. You're also going to pick your parts and your labor, that what it took to replace that. So that's where our total is really going to come from in this scenario. In work performed, I'm going back up the list. Work performed automatically sets the date there, and you can say you did this and that and explain what you've done. Common phrases exist here as well, and then you've got work performed history, which I showed you before, or mentioned before, I should say. So look up any work performed that's ever been done on install, and it'll list all that information there for a quick review, rather than having to click into work orders and read it on the other history functions. Save that. That lit up green there. My recommendations, we've got some recommendations. So this could be a dual part. So if you're going to be using our quoting system, that'll be helpful for starting the process. So if you know the customer is going to need something, you can go through and maybe you're out there to fix something, but the real recommendation is to replace it. You can make a recommendation here that you should do this, and then also you could start the quoting process and see if the customer wants to proceed with that. Maybe they're just going to decline it, so you can get show that it was declined. We'll talk about the quoting here in a little bit, but the recommendations to keep in mind here, this recommendation is kind of a note between you and the customer. Now, it will be sent back up to the office, and they can handle it as well. They can turn this recommendation into a new work order. It could be a quote. It could be, whatever. But also just keep in mind that it does print to the customer so that they will see that as well. And so I'm just going to put in test recommendations. That way I can kind of show you how that looks. Save that. One thing to note here. You notice the remaining characters. It does keep track. There is a character length on the recommendations. Compared to work performed, there's no character length on here. So you can write in whatever you need on there. It'll handle it on the back office to where they can see that anywhere. And actually, to note on that for the management, the field in SAMPRO is only so large. I know I didn't mention this in the previous one. The field is only so large, but what it'll do is it'll actually take it out if it knows it's going to surpass the size of the note. It'll take it out and put it into an actual SAMPRO note on the work order, and it will reference it there on the equipment work performed to say C note, blah blah blah, if the work performed carries on past the whatever character length it is there. Okay, so recommendations. Required resources is the last thing that we have here. That the idea, well, we don't have that enabled. I don't think we're going to be using it, but the idea there is to, if you ever use it, you know you're going to need parts for a job, so you can start the request now, which will put it into the works, and they can handle it on the back office to um, whether it needs to be transferred out of inventory or purchased, whatever needs to happen. Um, So we've done everything to this install equipment. Here we have everything's lit up green, which means we filled out everything. Uh, I could then go into my electrical equipment if I'm doing some electrical work as well and do the same thing. Fill out labor, material, miscellaneous to the electrical equipment um, to break out the charges by equipment. Now you can see work performed is required. You'll see that work performed is required for every piece of equipment that you add to this work order. It wants you to put in at least something. We've met the requirements for labor, material, miscellaneous by at least having one labor charge, material charge, or miscellaneous charge to the work order in general, not by equipment. So, and I'll talk about that, the requirements here in detail in just a little bit after we talk about quotes. So we talked about quotes, quoting a little bit. You know, you're out there servicing something, you notice, hey, you know, this should be replaced. The customer doesn't want to do it. Maybe they do want to do it. I won't go into too much depth here because this does get into a lot of different options. We could probably spend another hour just playing around in quotes, and we'll leave that for another day if we want to talk about that. But just simply, if you want to start adding a quote, you can actually build one out, get it submitted to the back office, and then they can take it from there. Or you could go as far as doing the whole thing, getting a price, getting customer signature, and doing the work right here on the spot as well. And having a documented quote can help you with that. So the way you would start it out is just hit add option. You would pick your equipment that you're going to add this option for. You're going to pick a flat rate. So you could say, you know, we're going to go do this. You know, one of your options could be to, um, you know, we talked about maybe fixing the humidistat. Well, you know, you could do a replacement on it or whatever. So you pick one of these guys here. Well, that one doesn't make much sense. The one I picked before was actually made most sense, but let's just pick one. So we're gonna get a price here, and you do have an option to actually look at documents. So if there's any kind of pictures or manuals or anything associated with the flat rate, you can load that up there. Same price level options that we had before. You can select the price level for the quote, add that flat rate, go in our scope of service. Now, the scope of service would have filled in from the flat rate if there was any, but you can go in and detail this all out of what you're going to be doing. Um, and really, this is what the customer would see when you go to print out this quote or email it to them, whatever. This is what they're going to see what you are doing. Um, you also have a unit down flag, so if it's high important, there's an option there which will change the description on the quote on the management side. So if you're going to have your management worry about the quoting, um, this becomes more of a priority for them over other quotes that are in the system. Hit update to save that, swap over, detail out your labor, your material. So let's just say real quick, it's going to be, uh, um, oops, I'm using my keyboard, which it doesn't want me to do. Um, so you can fill in how many hours it's going to take to do this. If my price is pulled in from the flat rate, we don't need to worry about that. Um, so that's some labor. You would say what materials you're using, so you would actually go and find that kit. I don't know what I'm actually looking for, but um, you would find that and get that added. Um, and like I mentioned, you can worry about the price depending on whether it's covered under the flat rate or not, add your miscellaneous charges. You get the point. It's the same kind of entry that you would see when you are um, just like you're adding it to the work order. Now comes to the last one. We've got a total there, and here's our quote summary, just to detail out everything to you, an hour, some parts here and there. There's our filter kit. Total is going to be $211. You can override the price if you want to. But once you've filled that all out, then you can back it out. Now it has saved that quote option. And then from there, you can say what you want to do. Well, actually, not what you want to do, what the customer wants to do. So you have an option to say accepted. So the customer wants to do it, but not today. You're going to let your manager or your sales rep handle, taking care of scheduling that out for someone in the future. You've got an approved option, which actually will take it and take those charges and put it right into the work order that we're on right now and allow you to actually start this job right now and get that all associated. Or if the customer doesn't want to do anything with it, you mark it declined. Either way, all of these options, these take it one step further, which actually gets you customer signature and ready for approval. Declined at this time does not do customer signature, but we are actually working on a feature to do that. So get your option in there, hit submit. Yes, we're going to submit that. And since I actually hit some weird keyboard combination, it force closed, and now I got to log in. So now it has sent that quote up to Sampro, where now you've got a historical event that the customer saw that and declined it and does not want to continue with it. Now, you might get a call in the future and say, hey, I really need to replace it now. Can you honor that quote? That's up to you guys to decide what happens with that. But there's some other options here, looking at existing quotes and approved and getting into those as well. Won't go into too much detail there. The notes, this allows you to create a note on the work order. This is kind of your communication back and forth between you and a dispatcher, or you and who's ever looking at that work order on the Sampro side. So it puts in who it's coming from. That's my tech ID, and you can say I'm testing some notes here, and however you want to manage that, you can add that. You can add more notes. Just keep in mind it works a lot like the document manager, where it doesn't send it up right now, but if you want to submit it right now, you can. Otherwise, it will eventually submit when you complete this work order. The dispatcher can see this, can even edit your note, can add more to it. You can also then, when it comes back around, add more to this note. It's just a constant. You can keep adding to it or communicating back and forth with someone on the Sampro side. They could have also added their own notes on the Sampro side, and you would be able to see those here as well. It's just to the work order, so it's just you're only going to see it on this work order here. If you get a new work order for this site, that's a new set of notes. And really the last thing we need to do for this work order is, by finishing it out, we're going to collect payment in this case because it's COD. Now, if it was non-COD, you would just get right into getting a customer signature, and then you can complete the work order and allow it to, send up all the information to the Sampro, and Sampro, they'll invoice it and handle the payment portion of that in the end. So I'll hit payment. Now, this screen here only pops up if you have not met all the requirements for the work order. And anything that's red here has not been fulfilled. So if I never had that electrical equipment on my work order here, it would have just skipped right to the next screen. But since I have it on here, and I did that on purpose to show you this, it's just a reminder to let you know, hey, you might have wanted to fill out work performed for this equipment. So you can go in and click on this equipment and go in and fill out your work performed real quick. Otherwise, you do have an option to bypass the requirements by checking off that little box down there in the bottom left-hand corner. Basically says that you verify the requirements, and allows you to then hit the sign button here, which takes us to the next step. This step is kind of an overview for you and your customer. You can pass it over. You can kind of see, uh, basically this is a summary. You've got the recommendations, the work performed. This is all the information that's going to print on your field ticket, and you can see the labor and the material and the miscellaneous charges are not here. They're hidden. They're behind the scenes because the bill quantity is 0. If the bill quantity would have been set to anything but 0, then they would have shown here with that bill quantity and the price and extended price there. So if everything looks good there, we're going to hit payment. That $203 comes across here and allows you two options here. You can do a discount, you can do a payment, or you can do neither. You can just skip it and say, the customer wasn't available to collect. You can just sign. It becomes an open receivable where that can be collected at a later date. But I am here. The customer is going to pay. We're gonna give them a discount today. We do have some options here. You can give a % discount. You can only do 1% discount. So you have some common discounts here. So you have a senior or an Angie's. So senior gets a 10% discount. So the adjusted subtotal comes into play there. You can add. And so you can see they got a $20.30 discount to bring the subtotal down. You can also add in, you can see I can no longer select flat. So if you had some other option where you're going to give them an additional $10 off, you do have options there. You can use your common discounts, or you can use a description to just say, why you're giving them that discount. I was going to say coupon here. Add that. So now we've got discounts. My total $172.70. I'm going to add payment. I'm going to collect full payment, which basically this is just a nice little shortcut to take this value and put it in here. It's really no different than you typing out that full value there. You can do partial payments. So if you want $100 here and $70 there and $2.70 on the third payment, that's possible as well. You have your different payment options. So if you do a credit card, you can pick your credit card payment type and actually process the credit card through the credit card partnership. So if you've got a credit swiper, you can pick your swiper option, which you'll press the button on the swiper, swipe your card, it'll process, and everything comes through. If you don't have a swiper, or your swiper is lost, or whatever it may be, you can do a manual credit card entry where you can actually, and that's for customer signature, you can do signature as well. But this will ask you for typing in the, I don't know why mine's not showing up properly there, but you would actually type in the email or the credit card number, the expiration, the CCV code, and get all that put in there, and that'll process through there. Once it authorizes and comes back, it will see the payment. There it goes. It'll see that the payment was collected, brings it back in, and brings you back to this screen where you would see a payment. Actually, I'll just go ahead and do a cash payment here. Oh, in the case of cash and check, I believe, well, check you would want to put in the check number, but cash you want to put in the date of when it was collected. So today is, July 20th, and you could put a time in there as well of, 12:15. Add that. And so now we've added a payment. So this is what it would have looked like if you took that credit card payment. It would just show up here. You would have got an authorization number shown in there as the reference number. So at this point, total due is 0. You're going to have the customer sign for this. And who signed it? I did. You're then going to hit the save button. And when you hit the save button, it has now at this point produced a field ticket with all that information, and it gives you the option: do you want to send an email? So if you say yes, remember we filled in customer@customer.com, it's going to remember that and pass it on to my email application and pre-fill and pre-attach everything. All you got to do is hit send. If it doesn't know an email address, then you're going to want to manually type one in there, or if there's an exception, you can overwrite the email address. So I'm not going to hit yes. My email doesn't work on this device, but you would send that if you want your customer to have that. So it gives you the option, do you want to send an email, yes or no, but I can also then view it. So if you hit view, it'll actually open it up in a PDF viewer, because this is a PDF. Some information about the site. There's my work requested for that came across when the work order was created. We've got work performed. Did this, did that. There's my flat rate. Like I said, notice how the labor and other charges aren't on here. There's my recommendations signature that we got and collection. Now you also have a location upon signature. So that's a link. It'll actually show where you are at, or where the customer is at the time of getting that signature. Subtotal, our discounts, bringing it down to total due. Customer would see that if there's an outstanding balance. I'll back out of that. Now, for whatever reason, you want to look at that document again, it's in your document management. There's a credit card authorization. It's actually going to be a canceled. I think this will work. Let's see. It just says that it was canceled. So you do get credit card information back from the credit card provider on that. Here's our invoice. You can click in that and see that same document again. And of course, the same options apply here. You could email this and re-email it if you had the bad email address or for whatever reason. So now we've done everything to this work order. The last step is to actually complete it. So up on the top, you have an option to mark it as checked out. Now you do have another optional completion status for manager review, depending on the situation, if you need someone to review that. But if everything is completed, ready to go, you can hit checked out. It'll take all that information, send it up to the back office. It'll post within a few minutes, so all those charges and everything will post. Takes it out of my open list, moves it over to my completed list, where it'll show up here, and you can see it's when I got the signature. I can click into it and view it. It's that same invoice that we generated before, and you can also email it here in case it was forgotten along the way as well after you've completed it. So at this point, work's complete. Move on to my next work order. One thing to note here is that we didn't talk about was the time review. So now over to my time review. You know what? I do not have a current payroll period open for the current date, which is July 20th. So I can't show you exactly what you would see at the moment, but what you would have here is on the 20th, it would say that we have, what I put in there, 3.5 hours. It would say 3.5 hours for the days so far. And then under it, each work order. So if you've, done a total of, 3 work orders in a day, you're going to see a breakdown of each one. There is a submit labor button up here, but honestly, it's pretty obsolete at this point because labor is actually submitted in much frequent intervals than ever before. But if for whatever reason you think you might have some labor that's on your device that hasn't been submitted, you can hit the submit labor, and it just takes any outstanding labor, and you have the option that, it tells you, 5 labor entries sent, or no new labor sent, or whatever the case might be. At that point, we are all set. We've gone through every piece of this. Of course, there's more quoting options to look into in the future, but that is TechAnywhere front to back. That was a COD type work order.